The story opens with a breathtaking view of a grand fantasy palace where our lead character, Seo Mi-rae, is getting herself ready for a date with her digital boyfriend, giving us just enough to be curious before the timeline rolls back 2 weeks earlier. Mi-rae is the kind of woman who runs her life on a tight schedule, and after a long day at work, she heads home with exactly 3.5 hours of personal time remaining, which she happily spends watching Netflix. She works at a webtoon management company, where her biggest professional competition is the well-respected producer Park Kyeong-nam, who has recently secured a major adaptation deal and is practically idolized by their colleague Unju. Mi-rae does not share that admiration, especially after Kyeong-nam delivers a brutally blunt critique of her latest pitch without holding back. Outside of work, Mi-rae keeps her social life deliberately minimal, skipping team dinners and avoiding anything that eats into her routine. Her friend Ji-yeon eventually convinces her to attend a wedding that weekend, and over food, Ji-yeon encourages her to consider dating someone more grounded, which quietly sends Mi-rae's thoughts drifting toward Kyeong-nam. The night ends with Mi-rae stumbling home drunk and collapsing on her floor. Back at the office, a significant internal shift is underway. After Mr. Cho suddenly resigns from the stress of managing the notoriously difficult top webtoon writer Yoon Song, the director is expected to reassign her to either Kyeong-nam or Mi-rae. Since the romance producers want nothing to do with Yoon Song and Mi-rae's workload is comparatively lighter, she becomes the likely candidate. Both Mi-rae and Kyeong-nam separately show up at the director's office with macaroons, each trying to hand the responsibility to the other, but Mi-rae ends up with the role regardless. She already knows exactly what she is walking into, having managed Yoon Song previously and experiencing firsthand how high-maintenance, emotionally fragile, and lawsuit-happy she can be. Adding personal weight to the situation, Mi-rae learns that Yoon Song's ex, Sejun, who is also a mutual friend, is now engaged to another woman named Yumi. This hits Mi-rae hard since she once loved him, and they had even discussed marriage, though the relationship always felt one-sided on her end. Yoon Song wastes no time messaging Mi-rae repeatedly, and the two eventually meet for an uncomfortable lunch, where Yoon Song proves herself to be self-centered and completely resistant to any form of constructive feedback. During this meeting, a businessman named Min Jun-young is introduced alongside the director, and he proposes that Mi-rae spend 1 month testing a new dating simulation app called Boyfriend on Demand, which is built around Yoon Song's popular webtoon character, Siwoo, and he offers to pay her for the experience. At home that evening, Mi-rae sets up the device and is immediately pulled into a virtual world that mirrors the very webtoon she had criticized, complete with Siwoo washing ashore after surfing. A massive wave suddenly engulfs Mi-rae and pulls her underwater, and through some visually ambitious CGI, she manages to rescue Siwoo. And as they both surface, the two finally lock eyes for the very first time. Mi-rae finds herself inside the virtual reality world, surrounded by floating orbs that carry a dreamlike quality, and it is here that she is introduced to her personalized dating manager, who will be guiding her through every experience the simulation has to offer. She is given a special ring to wear while logged in, and the moment she removes it, she returns to the real world. She slides it onto her thumb and steps back into the beach scene where things had left off with Siwoo, though she quickly pulls the ring off the moment he reaches out and touches her, because the sensation feels startlingly real. Curious about what she has gotten herself into, Mi-rae does some research and discovers that the app engages all 5 senses and is designed to completely transform how people experience romance. With over 900 themes and countless virtual boyfriends available, she finds herself genuinely impressed, even though she has barely scratched the surface of what the platform can actually offer. Back at the office, Kyeong-nam quietly learns that his client Hwani's webtoon is being moved to Fridays, which will place it in direct competition with Yoon Song's series. The director believes the rivalry will push both writers to perform better, though Kyeong-nam remains unconvinced and chooses not to mention any of it to Mi-rae just yet. That evening, Mi-rae puts the headset back on and finds herself at a hotel with Siwoo, stumbling through a series of cliched romantic scenarios that have her cringing so hard she yanks the ring off and calls it a night. The next day, Mi-rae finds out about the schedule change herself and confronts the director, while Yoon Song is unreachable in a karaoke booth and surprisingly unbothered by the whole situation. Mi-rae eventually talks her back into competing seriously by working with her on fresh story directions, Though Yoon Song admits she has grown tired of the formulaic content she has been producing and knows she has largely coasted on Siwoo's appeal alone. Needing a reset, Mi-rae logs back into the app and encounters a couple of supporting characters that Min has added based on her earlier suggestions. Before settling into a proper date with Siwoo involving rooftop champagne, designer outfits, and a genuinely good time, the experience sparks a creative idea, and Mi-rae visits Yoon Song to pitch a back-to-basics approach, stripping away the cheesy dialogue and leaning fully into the chaebol fantasy that readers originally fell in love with. The strategy works brilliantly, and the man-to-know climbs straight to the top spot. Mi-rae walks into the office the following morning as the undisputed star of the team, throwing a pointed smile in Kyeong-nam's direction, while her colleagues celebrate around her. In her downtime, she continues dating Siwoo virtually, keeping things casual when he attempts to propose, though she does agree to be his girlfriend. Just as he leans in for a kiss and Mi-rae describes hitting a full dopamine explosion, the entire simulation freezes because she has burned through her 50-hour limit. The disruption follows her into her real life, leaving her visibly distracted at work. When Min checks in on her experience, she shares her honest feedback about Siwoo, and he reminds her that 899 other virtual men are still waiting. Taking that as her cue, Mi-rae dives back in and prepares to meet her next potential boyfriend. Mi-rae steps into her next virtual dating experience and finds herself on a soft pastel pink university campus that feels like a warm trip back to younger, simpler days. She is quickly joined by her old classmate, Soo-ji, and the two of them explore the grounds before ending up at a fencing match where a standout player named Eun-ho is turning heads, the very same guy she had briefly crossed paths with at the end of her previous session. Determined to get closer to him, Mi-rae signs herself up for the fencing club and ends up going head-to-head with Eun-ho in front of everyone, holding her own impressively and even getting the upper hand on him during their match. Mr. Ko also makes an appearance here, going by the name Young Pil in this setting as a senior club member. Unlike Siwoo, who had been immediately drawn to Mi-rae, Eun-ho is considerably more reserved and does not warm up to her quickly at all. Her dating manager explains that this is simply how some of the 900 candidates are designed, requiring genuine effort and patience rather than instant chemistry. The challenge only motivates Mi-rae further, though it begins costing her at work as she starts dozing off at her desk and neglecting her responsibilities. The one saving grace during this period is that Yoon Song has temporarily gone on hiatus, which opens up some much-needed breathing room. A candid conversation with Ji-yeon about past relationships only pushes Mi-rae to pursue Eun-ho more seriously inside the simulation. A rival named Ye-rin soon enters the picture, also chasing after Eun-ho, which creates quiet competition between the two women, while simultaneously giving Mi-rae and Eun-ho more natural opportunities to spend time together and slowly learn about each other. Their connection deepens one evening after dinner, when they end up walking back toward the dorms and get caught in the rain, ducking into a laundry room together to dry off. The whole scenario begins pulling Mi-rae uncomfortably close to memories of Sejun, but Eun-ho draws her attention back by casually referencing the dramatic hair toss she had attempted earlier in class to get his attention, and he reassures her that Ye-rin is not a concern worth carrying. Back in the real world, Mi-rae finds herself noticing how freely Sejun now shares his life with Yumi on social media, compared to how guarded he always was with her. She buries herself deeper into the app to manage those feelings, and is even napping between sessions at work. After a team dinner, Kyeong-nam briefly steps outside with her before heading off and leaving her standing alone in the rain. That same night, she discovers online that Sejun and Yumi are getting married, and he personally calls her to apologize for how she found out. Carrying all of that emotional weight into her final 4 hours on the subscription, Mi-rae struggles to enjoy the experience the way she normally would. The Eun-ho storyline, with its slow burn tension and campus nostalgia, ends up mirroring the early stages of her relationship with Sejun closely enough that she finally allows herself to sit with those memories, both the warm and the painful ones, using them as a quiet but meaningful step toward letting go. Just as Eun-ho leans in toward Mi-rae during a quiet sunset moment, her free trial subscription cuts out and the entire experience vanishes before anything can happen, bringing her virtual romance to an abrupt but perfectly timed end. Back in the real world, Mi-rae gives Eun-ho a full 5-star rating and spends some time reflecting on everything the simulation put her through. The experience has also given her a fresher perspective on Yoon Song's work, helping her understand why readers keep coming back despite the criticism, though she remains firm that complacency is not something they can afford right now. When a real-life date opportunity comes up through one of Yoonju's friends, Mi-rae genuinely considers it, but Kyeong-nam, seated at the next table, casually mentions that she is already seeing someone, which kills the moment entirely and leaves Mi-rae quietly backing out of the whole thing. On the walk to the taxis afterward, he apologizes for overstepping, and the two share a surprisingly warm exchange about working together on the webtoon evaluations. That evening, Ji-yeon calls with an invitation to Da-young's dinner, and on her way into town, Mi-rae runs into Min, who is busy setting up a boyfriend-on-demand pop-up store. He tries to get her talking about her virtual dating experiences, but she keeps her answers vague. Da-young's dinner ends up including an extra guest, giving Mi-rae a live opportunity to test whether real romance holds up against the virtual kind. The night goes reasonably well until the guy becomes noticeably pushy afterward, repeatedly pushing to meet again in a way that feels more desperate than charming, and Mi-rae shuts it down before he can even walk her home. Later that night, in a hilariously drunk state, Mi-rae mistakes an Eunho billboard for the real thing, and that moment alone is enough to convince her to commit to a proper paid subscription. She agrees to spend 500,000 won a month on the app, and when she logs back in, the upgraded experience greets her with a virtual home, stocked with clothes, shoes, and accessories. She immediately wants to continue where she left off with Eunho, but jumping straight to a specific boyfriend turns out to be a premium feature she has not unlocked yet. Instead, she dives into her basic package and meets her third date, an NIS agent named Bae Hyun-woo, with Mi-rae playing a flight attendant who gets swept into a high-octane rescue from a foreign terrorist. The scenarios that follow race through everything from period dramas to medical settings, and Mi-rae has a genuinely entertaining time rating each one, with her virtual dating experiences even starting to influence the advice she gives around the office. However, things take a professional hit when she completely misses a glaring typo in one of Song's chapters, confusing two words in a way that sends the internet into a frenzy of mockery. The director pulls her up for it, and Kyeong-nam adds his own teasing in the break room, while Song herself is absolutely furious over the online ridicule. Interestingly, Song later finds a boyfriend-on-demand headset, waiting for her as a gift. Back inside the simulation, Mi-rae is met with a welcome surprise when Eunho himself appears, with the dating manager having arranged a second chapter of their story, picking up right where their connection had first begun. Mi-rae and Eunho head out for dinner together inside the simulation, where she fills him in on her life as a webtoon developer since they last met, and the game even conjures up a business card out of thin air to help sell the story. What impresses her even more is that Eunho now has access to her real-world phone, meaning the two can continue exchanging calls and messages even after she has logged out completely. That growing attachment starts affecting her punctuality, and she shows up late to work, where Kyeong-nam pushes her on a new original submission, while taking indirect shots at the formulaic storylines currently topping the charts, which is clearly aimed at Song's work. The tension carries into an awkward shared lunch where he quizzes her on her personal preferences, though Mi-rae is mostly counting down the hours until she can get back to Eunho, and Kyeong-nam notices her smiling privately at her screen while exchanging messages with someone. Things get more emotionally complicated when Ji-yeon shows up at her place in tears, completely exhausted after 30 failed attempts at dating, and seriously questioning whether a real connection is even possible for her anymore. Her words sit heavily with Mi-rae, who finds herself quietly measuring her virtual relationship against everything Ji-yeon is experiencing in the real world. The Nemo team then heads out on an overnight workshop retreat, and with limited signal cutting off her communication with Eunho, Mi-rae is forced to be fully present with her colleagues. Kyeong-nam loosens up noticeably after some soju, and the night winds down with karaoke before Mi-rae spots him sitting outside with Eunju in what feels like an intimate moment. On the drive back the following morning, Kyeong-nam raises concerns about her dropping sales numbers before almost casually admitting that he likes her and attempting to ask her out. Mi-rae is completely caught off guard and cannot find a response, though she later recalls that he had firmly shut Eunju down that same evening when she expressed interest, making his confession feel far more sincere than she initially wanted to believe. When Kyeong-nam eventually pushes her for an answer, Mi-rae tells him she is already seeing someone, which closes the conversation. However, her confidence in Eunho takes a serious hit when she discovers that over 12,000 women are simultaneously dating the exact same version of him and sharing identical experiences. The feeling of something personal and unique disappears instantly, and she walks out of one of their dates midway through, seriously considering canceling her subscription. Her dating manager intervenes and introduces her to a premium tier called BOD 901, which offers a fully bespoke virtual partner built entirely around her preferences, a man named Gu Young-il, created solely for her. Mi-rae works through every customization detail carefully, and when her perfect match finally appears, he looks exactly like Kyeong-nam. Mi-rae steps onto the fantasy road, feeling genuinely excited to meet her perfectly customized match, and standing there to greet her is a red-haired, leather jacket-wearing version of Kyeong-nam, holding her dotted scarf in his hand. In this virtual world, he goes by the name Young-il, and her dating manager makes it immediately clear that his appearance is not up for debate, since this is Mi-rae's perfect man and there are absolutely no returns being processed. Flustered and unsure how to handle it, Mi-rae removes her ring and steps back into reality to think. Back at the office, she finds herself completely thrown by Kyeong-nam's presence, stealing glances at him throughout the day and genuinely questioning whether she has been misjudging him this entire time. During their next work meeting, she actually takes a moment to properly look at him and finds herself noticing things she had never paid attention to before, a realization made heavier when she considers how many genuinely good men are already committed to someone else. Rather than sit with those feelings, she redirects her energy toward Young-il, and the two of them end up at a bar with Mr. Ko playing bartender, sharing cocktails while Young-il proves himself to be exactly the kind of free-spirited, effortlessly charming mix of bad boy and gentleman that Mi-rae had built from scratch. Back at work the following day, she convinces herself that her heart is not reacting to Kyeong-nam simply because Young-il is a completely different person, and she holds on to that reasoning tightly. The director then calls both of them in to discuss the upcoming BCF Awards, a prestigious webtoon ceremony where both Yun-song and Hwani are nominated, meaning Mi-rae and Kyeong-nam will inevitably be spending even more time in each other's orbit. On the way out, Kyeong-nam quietly asks her to stop avoiding him, so obviously since the rejection has not exactly been easy on his end either. The awards night arrives and Yun-song takes home the popularity award, while Hwani wins the far weightier Best Work award for Plan C. Yun-song is visibly furious at being overshadowed, and when she shoves Mi-rae outside, Kyeong-nam catches her just as fireworks light up the sky behind them. At the dinner afterward, Song publicly calls out Hwani over old gifts left outside her door, convinced he had carried a torch for her, only to discover he had actually been interested in her assistant So Young the whole time. Song covers her embarrassment by claiming she already has a boyfriend, and it turns out that is entirely true, as a man named Ji-ong calls her phone on the ride home, while Mi-rae is dropping her off. Later that night, a noticeably drunk Mi-rae wanders down to the beach with a beer, and when Young-il calls suggesting they meet, she laughs it off but keeps talking. At that exact moment, Kyeong-nam appears in front of her, and convinced she is looking at Young-il, Mi-rae reaches out and gently touches his face with a smile. Kyeong-nam has been watching Mi-rae closely, noticing how distracted she seems, and everything we're seeing at this point is entirely from his perspective before the beach incident even happens. Their connection has been built through a string of coincidences that kept pulling them into each other's orbit, from shared elevator rides to Secret Santa exchanges. The moment that really stuck with him, though, was when a chocolate-covered kid smeared Mi-rae's jacket and Kyeong-nam tried to step in, later realizing he had pushed a little too hard. He experimented with different approaches over the following weeks, including keeping his distance, but something always drew him back to her, like that moment with the bottle caps during the retreat. This brings us right back to where last episode ended. They walk together toward their hotel rooms, and Kyeong-nam comes across as blunter than he intends, largely because he had overheard Song and Mi-rae talking about how Mi-rae is actually single, which directly contradicts what she had told him. After the award show, Song is dealing with a rough morning and convinces Mi-rae to accompany her to the airport, leaving Kyeong-nam visibly disappointed at the beach with the rest of the team. Back home, Mi-rae slips deeper into her fantasy world with Young-il, though the lines between him and Kyeong-nam are becoming increasingly blurred in her mind. She decides to start avoiding Kyeong-nam at work, but that plan falls apart quickly, especially after she walks straight into a glass window and leaves behind her keyring, which Kyeong-nam quietly picks up. She tries hiding the bump with bangs, fooling nobody. One cold night in the office, the heaters cut out and the two end up sitting together, sharing a genuinely warm moment. Drama follows when Hwani surpasses Song in the webtoon rankings, sending Song into a spiral while the company quietly panics over her contract renewal. Mi-rae rallies her with a pep talk before they head to dinner, coincidentally, at the same restaurant as Hwani and Kyeong-nam. Things get hilariously awkward when Song invites So-young along. By the end of the night, Kyeong-nam pulls Mi-rae aside, asks for honesty between them, and when she finally admits she's single, he takes his boldest step yet, telling her directly that he wants her to know how much she means to him. Kyeong-nam is ready to show Mi-rae exactly how he feels, but they get called back inside before the moment can fully land, and that's when Hwani casually drops the fact that Kyeong-nam used to be into art back in college. Considering Mi-rae always imagined her dream guy being someone creative, that detail hits differently. Later that night, she ends up beside him while charging her phone, and when he gently reaches toward her head, her heart does something she wasn't expecting. From that point forward, Mi-rae starts noticing him everywhere, and Kyeong-nam has clearly shifted his approach, riding the elevator with her, dropping genuine compliments, slipping her favorite coffee onto her desk, sending a goodnight message, and even returning her secret Santa gift. Meanwhile, Mi-rae can barely hold her focus at work while Kyeong-nam is thriving professionally, pushing Hwani's growth and steering Plan C toward a potential video game deal. Ji-yoon, on the other hand, discovers her own romantic escape through a boyfriend-on-demand headset, complete with a guy who actually serenades her. On Christmas Eve, Kyeong-nam stays back with Mi-rae while she waits on Song's upload, and they share an honest conversation outside where he admits the composed exterior is mostly performance, that he carries his own weight beneath it. When Mi-rae spots an upcoming art festival, he suggests they go together, though he makes clear he'll respect whatever she decides. Before leaving, he hands her a Christmas card and tells her to read it later. She does, and inside, he asks her to dinner, just the two of them, which sends her spiraling into questions about what she actually wants versus what she has been settling for with Young-il. After the holidays, during a department presentation, Mi-rae quietly signals, through a double meaning, that her feelings for him aren't going anywhere yet. She's simultaneously terrified. She knows it has always been Kyeong-nam making her heart race, but the fear of another heartbreak convinces her to walk away before anything even starts. Then the company announces its push into the American webtoon market, sending the director overseas. On the way home, Mi-rae and Kyeong-nam share a taxi, and when she refuses his umbrella, he calls her out directly, asking why something so small feels like such a loaded decision for her. She finally admits that he pulls her in every single time, that she has nothing figured out, and that the idea of them together genuinely scares her. She believes every beginning carries a guaranteed ending. He pushes back, telling her that change brought him to her, and then he leans in and kisses her. At the art exhibition, Kyeong-nam browses the paintings alone and starts losing hope that she'll actually show up. But just as he's heading out, he spots Mi-rae across the road, arriving fashionably late as ever. They end up holding hands through the gallery and follow it up with a horror movie, which turns out to be the perfect excuse to stay close. From that point on, the two dive headfirst into dating, and Mi-rae finally starts letting her walls down, even sneaking a cheeky handhold with him in the work elevator. Meanwhile, Ji-yeon has become dangerously comfortable with Boyfriend on Demand, tearing through romantic scenarios at a pace that has the app's dating manager genuinely struggling to keep up. She channels everything into an article under the alias Boyfriend Killer, which pulls over 10,000 views and essentially functions as a navigation guide for women looking to fast-track the whole process, something that quietly starts alarming the people running the app, since users blazing through 200 candidates in 2 months are not exactly renewal material. Back with the couple, things are warm and playful, though work pressures haven't disappeared. Song is deeply consumed by the game and her virtual relationship, which is visibly affecting her output and focus. When a BOD advertisement plays in the office, Kyeong-nam openly dismisses the idea of any woman getting hooked on it, and Mi-rae says absolutely nothing. That same night, Hwani uploads ahead of schedule and pulls Kyeong-nam away for drinks with the writing team. He swings by the office afterward in a slightly tipsy state and shares a sweet moment with Mi-rae before they part for the night, unaware that the rankings have already shifted and Song has quietly climbed back to the top. The plagiarism accusations hit next, with the public drawing sharp comparisons between Siwoo from the webtoon and Young-il from inside the game, a connection that viewers have known about since the very beginning. Sentiment turns fast, the media piles on, and Song's fanbase spirals into chaos. In the middle of all this, Mi-rae panics and asks Kyeong-nam to grab her USB from the office, instantly regretting it when she remembers it contains over 50 hours of log bot activity along with a folder plainly labeled Review. She rushes back, but he has already found everything, including her headset. He hugs her warmly and plays it cool, though Mi-rae spends the rest of the evening terrified about what he might actually be thinking. Later that night, unable to sleep, Kyeong-nam wanders into her apartment space, finds a photo of Mi-rae, and then stumbles onto a video from Young-il. One thing leads to another, and Kyeong-nam ends up inside the game itself, standing face-to-face with Young-il through Mi-rae's own avatar. Mi-rae wakes up from a strange dream to find Kyeong-nam noticeably cold toward her, still processing everything he saw when he entered the game and came face-to-face with Young-il. What's eating at him most is the discovery that her subscription had still been active throughout their entire relationship, which feels like a quiet betrayal given how openly they had promised each other honesty. When she tries to dance around it, Kyeong-nam cuts straight through and brings up exactly what he found because that has always been his way. The tension barely has time to settle before the Song situation explodes at the office. After the bod scandal links back to the company, Song gets dropped entirely and storms in to confront the director, causing enough chaos that Mi-rae ends up with a cut finger from a Siwoo cutout getting ripped apart mid-confrontation. Kyeong-nam walks in while she's being patched up but keeps his distance, still not ready to soften. Mi-rae considers reaching out but holds back, turning Ji-yeon's advice over in her mind. Meanwhile, Kyeong-nam vents to Hwani over dinner, and Hwani cuts to the point telling him that no artificial version of love, no matter how convincing, could ever replace something real and unpredictable. That lands hard. Mi-rae, for her part, renews her subscription one last time and heads back into the game specifically to confront Young-il about what he shared with Kyeong-nam. The next morning at work is painfully awkward between them, but Mi-rae quietly advocates for Song and convinces the director to settle on a suspension rather than a full dismissal. She resolves to go emotionally cold and protect herself right up until Kyeong-nam shows up at the coffee shop, tells her plainly that he has been following his heart and that he knows exactly what he wants. When he pulls her in, her heart gives her the only answer that matters. They patch things up, but soon a near miss in the storage room ends with a falling shelf landing on Kyeong-nam and breaking his arm. Mi-rae rushes to the hospital, finds Dong-min already there, and sits beside Kyeong-nam in tears, holding his hand and apologizing through sobs. Outside the hospital, they finally lay everything bare. Mi-rae, admitting she returned to Young-il one last time and confessing her fear that things between them might still fall apart. Kyeong-nam tells her honestly that she scares him too, that his feelings for her grow a little more every single day, and that he has chosen to lean into that rather than run from it. He tells her he is happy just taking things one moment at a time, and Mi-rae decides that is exactly the kind of love she is ready for. Everything finds its resolution from there. The director wraps up his final night with the team, Song makes her peace, and Mi-rae steps back into the game one last time to say a proper goodbye to Young-il, closing that chapter for good and choosing her real life with both hands.